War has many heroes. Some carried rifles, others maps or medical kits, but one of the most unlikely heroes of World War II walked on 4 legs and had a taste for beer. This is the true story of Wojtek, the bear who joined the Polish army. Our story begins not in Poland, but in the mountains of Persia, modern-day Iran, in 1942. The world was at war, and thousands of Polish soldiers, having escaped Soviet captivity, were marching west to join the Allied forces. Among them were men who had lost everything, their homes, their families, even their country. One day, as the soldiers passed through a small village near Hamadan, they encountered a young boy carrying a small bundle, a cub, tiny and hungry, its mother killed by hunters. The soldiers couldn't resist. One of them, a woman named Irina Bokiewicz, persuaded her comrades to buy the cub. They fed him condensed milk from an old vodka bottle. That cub soon became their companion, their mascot, and their hope. They named him Wojtek, meaning joyful warrior in Polish. At first, Wojtek was just a playful bear cub, clumsy and curious. He would follow the men around, tumble into tents, and sleep beside them during cold desert nights. But as he grew, so did his bond with the soldiers. He learned to salute, to march beside them, and even to wrestle playfully, though few dared to challenge him after he grew to full size. He was more than a pet. He became a brother in arms, a symbol of resilience for men who had lost their homeland but not their spirit. As the days passed, the little bear grew. What began as a helpless cub soon became the heartbeat of the Polish 22nd Artillery Supply Company. Wherever the soldiers went, Wojtek went too, trotting beside the convoys, his thick fur glinting under the Persian sun. The men taught him everything a good soldier should know. When they marched, he marched. When they rested, he rested beside them, his heavy paws sinking into the desert sand. He learned to stand upright and raise his paws if saluting. The soldiers roared with laughter the first time he did it, and from that day on Wojtek was one of them. The Polish soldiers had endured years of tragedy, Soviet prisons, exile, and the loss of their homeland. Yet somehow, a bear cub brought them back to life. They built makeshift toys for him, rolled empty barrels across the camp for him to chase, and shared their rations with him, even when food was scarce. At night, the campfire glowed orange against the dark desert sky. The men would gather to smoke, sing, and share stories of home. Wojtek would sit among them, sometimes curling up beside a sleeping soldier, his massive frame keeping them warm against the cold. And then, as he grew, his appetite and personality grew too. He developed a fondness for beer, sipping carefully at first, then guzzling entire bottles handed to him by laughing soldiers. Cigarettes fascinated him. He would take one, hold it clumsily in his paw and pretend to smoke it, puffing out his cheeks. Wojtek wasn't just a mascot. He was family. He gave the soldiers something priceless, a reason to smile in a world that had forgotten joy. Wherever they went, Iraq, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Wojtek became a symbol of the Polish spirit. Stubborn, loyal, unbreakable. He would sit in the driver's seat of trucks, poke his head out the window, and even join in wrestling matches with the men, though few dared challenge him once he reached his full weight. Nearly 500 pounds of muscle and mischief. Yet beneath the laughter, there was something deeper, a quiet understanding that Wojtek represented what they had lost and what they were fighting to regain: innocence, home, and the will to survive. By 1943, Wojtek was no longer the playful cub they had found in Persia. He was now a full-grown bear, towering over most men when he stood upright, loyal, fearless, and utterly devoted to his human comrades. The Polish 22nd Artillery Supply Company was now part of the British 8th Army, preparing for transport to join the Allied campaign in Italy. The men were eager to fight, to prove themselves after years of exile, but they faced a new problem. When they reached the port of Alexandria in Egypt, British officers made an announcement: no pets or animals allowed aboard military transports. The soldiers looked at each other in disbelief. How could they leave Wojtek behind? He wasn't just a mascot, he was a comrade, one who had marched, trained, and lived among them. For a moment there was silence. Then someone had an idea, a truly Polish solution to a very British problem. If animals weren't allowed, they would make Wojtek a man. And so, with paperwork, official stamps, and plenty of laughter, Wojtek was enlisted as a private in the Polish army. He was given a rank, a serial number, and even a paybook, complete with rations of food, beer, and occasional cigarettes. Now, no one could question his right to board. Wojtek was not cargo. He was a soldier. The British officers couldn't believe it when they saw him standing proudly beside the troops wearing a canvas harness with his name stitched in Polish. But rules were rules, and technically Private Wojtek was one of them. When the ship set sail for Italy, the men cheered. Wojtek leaned over the railing, staring curiously at the waves, occasionally swatting at sea spray as if challenging the ocean itself. The voyage was long and tense. Supplies were limited, and everyone knew what awaited them. The brutal Italian campaign, where the mountains would be as deadly as enemy fire. Yet Wojtek kept spirits high. He played with the crew, stole fruit from crates, and even helped carry equipment up from the lower decks. One officer later said, "He was the best-behaved soldier on the ship." When they finally reached Italy, the soldiers disembarked, weary but ready. And there, under the Mediterranean sun, Wojtek took his first steps onto European soil, a soldier returning in a way to the continent his human brothers had lost. He was no longer a cub rescued from the wilderness. He was now Private Wojtek of the 22nd Artillery Supply Company, a bear of the Polish army, heading into one of the bloodiest battles of World War II, Italy, 1944. The land of sunshine and olive groves had become a nightmare of mud, mountains and minefields. The Polish II Corps, to which Wojtek's unit now belonged, was tasked with one of the most dangerous missions of the entire war, the Battle of Monte Cassino. The monastery atop the mountain was a German fortress. From its ancient stone walls, machine guns and artillery watched over the valley below. Every Allied attempt to take it had failed. The cost in lives was staggering. Now it was the Poles' turn. As the 22nd Artillery Supply Company advanced through the narrow mountain passes, the air filled with thunder, not of storms, but of distant shells. The men worked tirelessly, hauling crates of ammunition and supplies up treacherous slopes slick with rain and blood, and right in the middle of it all Ryassos walked Wojtek. The soldiers often said, "Where the bear goes, courage follows." He trudged along the convoys, unbothered by the chaos around him. When trucks got stuck in the mud, he pushed with his massive paws. When shells whistled overhead, he ducked calmly, glancing at the men as if reminding them to stay focused. The closer they got to the front, the more intense the fighting became. German artillery rained down day and night. The earth shook with every blast. Sleep was rare. Food was scarcer. But Wojtek didn't falter. When the shelling grew too close, he would huddle with the men in their foxholes, enormous, gentle, breathing heavily in the dark. Sometimes a trembling soldier would reach out and rest a hand on his fur, feeling comfort in the warmth and steadiness of the great bear. He had become something more than a mascot. He was a guardian, a reminder of home, of loyalty, of something pure amid the madness of war. Then came the order they had been waiting for. Monte Cassino would be assaulted again, this time with everything the Allies had left. The 22nd Company's role was critical. Keep the frontline guns supplied no matter the cost. The men checked their gear, loaded the trucks, and prepared for the impossible. And standing beside them, snorting clouds into the cold morning air, was Wojtek, ready to march into history. May 1944. The Battle of Monte Cassino had reached its final desperate stage. The slopes below the monastery burned day and night under endless artillery fire. Smoke blotted out the sky. The ground was a maze of craters, shattered trees and wrecked vehicles. For the men of the 22nd Artillery Supply Company, there was no rest, only the endless rhythm of war. Load, carry, fire, repeat. Every shell counted. Every delivery meant lives saved, positions held, and progress made. And among those men was a 6-foot-tall Syrian brown bear named Wojtek. As the Polish troops advanced, their supply lines were stretched thin. Ammunition had to be carried by hand to the guns pounding the German strongholds. Wojtek watched as his comrades lifted heavy artillery shells, long metal cylinders weighing nearly 100 pounds each, and then, without being told, he began to mimic them. He stood upright on his hind legs, lumbered toward a crate, and wrapped his massive arms around a live artillery shell. Soldiers froze in disbelief. "Is he? He's carrying it!" someone shouted. Step by step, the bear trudged forward, balancing the shell against his chest. He passed stunned soldiers, through mud and rubble, until he reached the gun crew. He set it down gently, then turned around and went back for another. The men burst into laughter, cheers, and disbelief. In that moment, Wojtek wasn't just a mascot. He was one of them. All day and into the night he worked alongside the artillerymen, carrying crates of ammunition, never dropping a single one. Bullets whistled overhead, explosions shook the ground, but Wojtek pressed on, calm, determined, unstoppable. The soldiers later said it was as if he understood the stakes, as if he knew that their survival depended on those shells reaching the front. Word of the bear spread quickly through the Allied lines. Officers and soldiers came to see him with their own eyes, the bear who carried ammunition under fire. When the Polish flag finally rose over the ruins of Monte Cassino, the men wept. They had paid dearly for victory. Thousands of their brothers lay buried on the slopes below. But they had done the impossible, and standing proudly among them, his fur caked with dust and soot, was Wojtek, the bear who fought like a soldier. In recognition of his service, the Polish army made it official. Wojtek was enlisted as a private, complete with his own serial number, paybook and rank. From then on, when asked who they served with, the men of the 22nd Company would smile and answer, "We fight with Wojtek, the bear soldier of Poland." The guns finally fell silent. After years of chaos, destruction and sacrifice, World War II was over. For the soldiers of the Polish II Corps, victory came not with cheers, but with tears. Tears for the friends who never made it home, for the country that was still not free, and for the memories they would carry forever. For Wojtek, the bear who had marched through deserts, mountains and battlefields, the sudden silence was strange. The smell of gunpowder faded. The rumble of artillery was gone. The men who had once marched in formation now sat around campfires, writing letters home, wondering what home even meant anymore. The 22nd Artillery Supply Company, proud of their service and their bear comrade, was reassigned to a transit camp in Italy before being transported to Scotland, where Polish forces were being demobilised. When the soldiers arrived in the small town of Berwickshire, locals could hardly believe the sight. A military truck pulling in with a real bear wearing an army insignia. But Wojtek was no wild animal anymore. He was a disciplined soldier. He saluted officers, marched alongside the men, and even learned to open doors and drink beer from bottles without spilling a drop. To the Polish soldiers, he was more than a companion. He was family. They had raised him from a cub, shared their food with him, fought beside him, and survived because of him. Wherever Wojtek went, laughter followed. Even the darkest memories seemed lighter when the great bear was around. But soon, the Polish soldiers faced a painful truth. Their homeland had fallen under Soviet control. Many couldn't return home. Doing so meant imprisonment or worse. So they stayed in exile, scattered across Britain, carrying their memories and their pride. As the unit began to disband, one question loomed over them all. What would happen to Wojtek? The men pleaded for him to stay with them, but regulations were strict. The bear couldn't remain in a military barracks indefinitely. After long discussions and many tears, the decision was made. Wojtek would be given a permanent home at the Edinburgh Zoo. When the day came, the soldiers gathered one last time. They hugged his massive neck, patted his fur, and whispered their goodbyes. Wojtek didn't understand why his family was leaving. He pawed at the truck, letting out deep, mournful grunts as they drove away. The men of the 22nd never forgot him. They visited whenever they could, throwing him cigarettes or bottles of beer over the fence, old habits they could never quite let go of. And when he saw them, Wojtek would rise up on his hind legs and wave, as if saluting his brothers in arms once more. Years passed. The world rebuilt itself. New wars began, old wounds slowly healed, and the soldiers who once fought at Monte Cassino grew grey and quiet. But through it all, the story of Wojtek, the bear who became a soldier, never faded. At the Edinburgh Zoo, visitors often stopped in front of the large brown bear who would sit upright, watching people with calm, intelligent eyes. Few realised that he wasn't just any bear. He was a veteran, a brother to men who had carried freedom on their backs through fire and mud. Those who knew would tell the story quietly to their children. That bear once carried artillery shells at Monte Cassino. He fought beside men, not against them. And every so often, when an old Polish soldier visited, Wojtek would come alive, standing tall, grunting, waving, as if remembering, as if waiting for one last order. The years were kind, but also lonely. The soldiers he loved grew older. Some stopped visiting. But Wojtek remained strong, dignified, and gentle to the end. In December 1963, at the age of 21, Wojtek passed away peacefully. When the news spread, it wasn't just a zoo announcement, it was a military obituary. Newspapers across Britain and Poland wrote tributes to the bear who went to war. Soldiers who had served with him wept as they remembered their comrade, their friend. But death could not erase his legend. Today, statues of Wojtek stand in Edinburgh, London, Krakow and Warsaw. They show a great bear walking beside a soldier, two brothers from different worlds, united by courage and loyalty. His image became a symbol of something deeper than war, the strength of friendship, the absurdity and humanity found even in chaos, and the power of compassion that crosses every boundary, even between man and beast. In military academies and museums, Wojtek's name is still spoken with pride. Not because he fought like a man, but because he reminded men of what they were fighting for, a symbol of courage, a friend in battle, a soldier in every sense that mattered. As one Polish veteran once said years later, "We all lost something in that war," but Wojtek reminded us that kindness, even in war, could still exist.